Hi, everybody, and thanks for coming in tonight. Um, so, um, I've had an interest in night photography and painting with light and that sort of thing for quite a few years. And so I kind of jumped at the opportunity when we had a special interest group start. And actually, Barbara Hodgson and David Austin are really good at it, especially the technique they're using. It's different than what I use. They're doing a lot of studio kind of things, and they're just beautiful. But I'm more interested in scenery things, and so what I've been doing is every summer for 2 months we travel with our trailer, and so that gives me an opportunity to do some painting with light, night photography. This example here um, is from the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and it's in a dispersed camping area, actually in the National Forest, a very little known area. So it's so great. We're out there all by ourselves, and there's no painting on light in this picture just because we got a full moon. Um, but I did want to mention, most of my stuff now I'm using either, I started with a 20 millimeter Nikon wide angle, and now I've got a 14 millimeter 2.8, which works pretty well. But when you use those, and of course I'm interested in getting the stars, so if you tilt your camera up like this, um, your subject matter, if it's near, especially if it's near one of the corners, you get a lot of distortion. It's not quite so bad if you get nearer to the center line, or even better is up here in this center line. But I've done others where I have lit the trailer and tried to get the stars, but the trailer, because it's a square box, at least the back, it really looked terrible. So I just have a problem with doing that. Um, let's see. Now I want to. There we go. So this is, of course, daylight, but this is the view from that last scene, and this is only a tiny portion of it. This the Vermilion Cliffs out here, and then down below is Marble Canyon. Um, just a really beautiful spot to go. Let's see. I'm not getting to. Okay, strange way to forward. Okay. So another spot we've gone is Grand Teton National Park, and we camp near there. That's kind of right between Yellowstone and Jackson Hole, and closer to Jackson Hole. We don't go up to Yellowstone just because it's such a mob scene, but we really enjoy Jackson Hole and Grand Tetons. And this is one of the iconic things to photograph there. This is one of the Mormon barns. There's actually two, and then I think both of their farmhouses are there too. And I photographed it all times of day and night. Um, I guess the best picture I've seen of it is when there are bison in the foreground. And the best way to photograph these barns is to get back and use a telephoto, and that really makes your mountain range stand out. The closer you are to the barn, the smaller the mountains appear. And of course, usually there are a lot of photographers there, so you have to take that into account, try to work around them. Let's see, so, okay. So here's when I did at night, painting with the light, and of course I'm a little closer there. The ridge line and the mountains are a lot closer. And so that was using a flashlight, and I would just go off to the, I forget if I went off to the left side. Anyway, just do skim the light across the surface so you get as much dimension as you can. And then when I was going through these, I thought, well, it's kind of weird without the roof in there. And so I looked through my photographs, and I had a photo of the roof. Now, it was from a different setup. It was a different zoom setting, and my camera had been tilted a little bit. So I had to, put the two images together in Photoshop and then kind of tilt and enlarge the roof portion. And so I put it in a um, less than 100% visibility so that I could see the overlay. And then once I did that, then I just painted out everything except the roof in the top image. So then I'm back to the other one. Um, Here's another one. This is Crater Lake. I took this in July, and we were camped about 20 miles away, so I drove up there, and I knew the moon rose about 10:30. And so I got up there, and this is about 11 o'clock. And, again, it was almost a full moon. So no painting with light, obviously. And also, I expected a whole bunch of people up there to be lined up with their cameras on tripods, but I was the only one. And obviously that was because it was a full moon and everybody else knew better, because it's really difficult to get any stars. And even close to 11 o'clock, there was still a lot of light along the horizon because of our, being pretty far north. So, summertime astrophotography, you got to deal with a full moon and also, getting up pretty late at night to get your photos. Um, this one was near the end of one of our summer trips. And it was, like where we were, kind of mourning the end of our trip and really enjoying sitting by the fire for the last time. And so I actually entered this in the photo in the juried exhibition, and but I wanted to add uh, the mountains and the stars, and so I took that from another photograph. So I got the Sierras and the Milky Way up there. Um, so if you're doing painting with light, you really need either somebody standing by the camera operating the shutter, or you need a remote release, shutter release. And this is one that I learned from the, fellow members at our uh, special interest group. And this is kind of an entry level model, but it works really nicely. Um, this unit here clips onto the hot shoe, and then the other one you carry, and it's a radio transmitter. And because I have two different bodies, camera bodies that are not the same, it was really great that they actually came with two separate cables. So it works with both my cameras. And as Ralph Clevenger pointed out a week ago in his presentation, Eric Curry has really been an inspiration for me, as well as with Ralph. Ralph has the advantage of having a cute Airstream trailer, pretty much like this one. Um, but Eric, he's into photographing mostly vehicles, and so he'll photograph like a hot Corvette that's in a garage, kind of an old rasty garage with stuff all around, tools and just cans and stuff. And he really likes those kinds of subjects with lots of, lighting each, he lights each part separately. You kind of get a feel for up here on the cover of his book. You get the background, you do some lighting of the trailer, then he's done some lighting here on the ground, and then the interior trailer, adding the chairs, and then, on and on. He has a light, a fire in the fireplace, and, so he'll end up taking like 200 or 300 exposures, which he then puts together. But I use the same method he does. So, if you're interested in doing this, this is a great book to pick up. One of the first times that I got to try this method out was we were visiting Charlie and Nancy Henry, who are members in our club, and they live in Colorado, real close to Rocky Mountain National Park at 9,000 feet. And so snowplow is an important thing in their life up there. And so this is Charlie's snowplow, which I just love. I can't believe, anybody needs a snowplow that big, but, I can see it up there. But anyway, so I lit his snowplow with the technique that I learned from Eric Curry. So, I'd light like each wheel separately, light the steps. I had to shine a light into these lights up here. I believe that's what we did. Every section was one exposure, and then I went behind the tractor and lit the background back there, a number of exposures. And, like when you're lighting the wheel here, you can be standing in the picture. It doesn't matter because you're only going to use this portion in that exposure. So it's pretty easy to do. And once you get a feel for what a good exposure is, then you can kind of just time it, just count when you're using your flashlight. And, for the first few, you kind of have to run back to the camera and see what it looks like. But then it gets a little easier. This is another one that Dan Moore and I actually went up to the gas station in Elwood. And the problem here was there's a 6-foot chain length fence all around it. And so I brought my 8-foot step ladder in my pickup truck and set it up just right by the fence, and then mounted just took duct tape and taped the tripod to the top of the tripod, to the top of the ladder. And so then here again, I'd stand over in this area and light along here. So you just skim the light right along the surface, and light each section and try to get as much depth into it as possible. And this is a problem where you're flashing with a flashlight. You tend to get streaks, so you want to kind of swirl it around, so that it's more evened out. And then put them together in Photoshop. Up by Flagstaff, Arizona, there's a national monument there. It's called Wupatki, and there's kind of a loop road that goes past 3 different areas where there are these ruins from the Indian Pueblo days. And so I went there and at night to photograph them. And so this is one exposure. And I think it was like 20 seconds so that I would get the stars about right. And then that meant that I had 20 seconds to do the flashlight, which worked out okay. And then I had to actually do some color correcting. So, whatever flashlight you use, like I started off, and I think here too, I was using an incandescent, just a regular flashlight. And so, I tried the tungsten setting on white balance, but it was too much. And so then you can go in Lightroom, you can just take the eyedropper and choose something that's of a neutral color, like maybe one of these whiter areas that's not totally overexposed. And if you just click on it, it will take out the color and give you a more natural color there. And then I had to select the sky separately and then do some adjusting there too, so that it came out pretty close. Here's another one. In this case, there was like a little canyon between these 2 structures. And I think there too, it might've been a single exposure. That was before I had my remote shutter release, cable release. And so I would try to do everything within 20 seconds. So I was pretty much jumping all over the place, of course. This was in Belize. I went down there on a workshop. It was a workshop to photograph insects. And so there were like 20 of us, and we go around to locations. And this was one of them. We went into a cavern, which had some really cool, really big insects in the cavern. And so we had to like ford a stream to get in. And it was like knee deep or so to get in through the stream. Now, other groups that stay at that same resort, they would go into the cavern too, but they take them a different way. Since we were carrying equipment, we got special treatment. But the other folks, they take them in where they were in up to their necks in the water to get in through the creek. But once you're in the cave, it was pretty cool, very large. And as you can see, there's stalactites and formations on the ground. And these broken pots here actually would signify a burial, from hundreds of years ago, where some Indian had died. And I guess to commemorate their death, they would take that Indian's pots and break them just to signify their death. So this was a painting with light situation there. Last November, I went to Trona Pinnacles, which is over near Ridgecrest. And while I was there, this is before it got dark, but it's pretty nice landscape there. It's been used in a lot of science fiction movies as sort of an otherworldly landscape. And there was a car parked down here someplace that I had to Photoshop out. And the guy that had that car, he was there. He was going over in this area over here to photograph the formations over there in the dark. And he said he was going to use a drone to provide the light, to paint the light in, which would be pretty interesting. So we went off and had dinner and then came back. And being November, it was actually pretty cold there. We didn't end up spending a lot of time there, but anyway, so I took a couple. This is one. I think this was maybe 2 exposures, one for the sky, one for the light here. And then this is the second one. And the sky actually was very orange because we're near a lot of cities. So the sky looks pretty bad. And so that's a situation where you have to, try different white balance settings and try to come up with something that, looks good. And in that case, I had maybe 3 or 4 foreground exposures for different areas, and then a separate one for the sky. And so I, joined them that way. And this was at a desert research station. If you're on Interstate 15 going towards Vegas, just before you get to Baker, there's a turnoff called Zyzx, Z-Z-Y-Z-X. And it used to be a resort. Now it's a research station. I think it's part of the UC system. And I was there for a workshop. And so they had a lot of junk lying around, including a row of old junk cars. These were the oldest, and there were like 6 or 7, I think, in a row. The newest one was maybe from the 60s, but I was more interested in these older guys. So I took a number of different photos there of these. There's not a heck of a lot left of these cars, just kind of the shell of the body. None of even the chassis are gone. And this one you've seen before. I've entered that in the juried exhibition. And I kind of liked it just because there's just a little hole up there for the stars to shine through. And the clouds are being lit by some local source. I don't know if that's from Baker or if it's from, I don't know, Barstow or what, but I kind of like it. I like the clouds having detail, and also the shine here on the mountain kind of helps. And I tried lighting these different ways, the cars. I tried standing near the camera and lighting them, which gave it a more flat lighting. but I found that what I liked best was to stand over kind of like right in front and shine the light straight in like that, and then go over and do the same on the other one. Um, and gave it more feeling and depth. So I like that one, I think the best. Um, I forget when exactly, but it was last fall, maybe October. Our special interest group went over to Sedgwick Ranch and got special permission to go in there at night and do some star photography. And so we set up on one, and then after it got really dark, I went over and looked for another tree to photograph. And so that's what this is. And because it was totally dark, you, I ran into this issue of I couldn't tell exactly how far down my camera was seeing, and so I kind of chopped off the bottom there, which was unfortunate. It's a little too tight there. Um, but in this case, I lit the tree about 4 different exposures, and here too, you get that kind of orangey glow from incandescent, probably lighting in Santa Barbara, and which you could correct, but I just figured, it's probably not worth it. So I haven't done anything more, but I did try this. Um, so in this case, I only used the one exposure of the background with a silhouetted tree, and that's on a tungsten white balance setting. Just kind of gives you the color you would get with the blue hour um, just after sunset. So one of the places that we have gone a number of times on our summer trips is Lava Beds National Monument. We usually go up 395. We go through the Owens Valley, past Mammoth and Mono Lake, all that, and continue on 395 up to Alturas, and then come over this way. And here's Lava Beds National Monument, just below the Oregon border. And that's a national monument that gets very few visitors. It's hot in the summer, but usually when we're there, it's not too bad. And the attraction there is a number of lava tubes. So the visitor center is right here, I believe, and there's a road right nearby that's kind of a loop road, and it's got like, I don't know, 8 or 10 lava tubes. So I've gone to those to photograph them. So you go in the lava tube, and even if it's like 90 degrees outside, it'll be 55 down in the lava tubes. And they're all, unlike, you can go in caverns and truly get lost, but in a lava tube, there's an entrance and an exit. And there might be some branches in there, which will either dead end or rejoin. But you really can't get lost, even though, you're in total darkness. And so it's kind of an eerie feeling, and you can think you're getting lost for sure. So anyway, this was one that I lit, and I lit, like I'd stand over on this side, light over here, and then stand over here and light this side, and go on down, do that everywhere. And then, kind of shine one pretty low to get the floor so you get a little detail on the floor, and go all the way in as far as you can to show as much depth as you can. And then I stood there, and Laura did one from the tripod, did one of me. So and then I put them all together. So that's about 10 exposures probably. And that's with a incandescent flashlight. And so you get a pretty warm color there, which I didn't correct. Perhaps I should have. This one, you get a totally different feeling. And I think this one was with an LED flashlight. And I wanted to show this as things not to do. For instance, it was too long of an exposure, and Laura didn't stand rock solid still, so she's not sharp. And also, the lighting is pretty much all over. And so I'll show another one next that gives you much better feel of depth. And I was pretty sloppy here in my editing too. I should have painted those things out. So in this one, you know, let's see, there we go. Now I can go back. Okay, so same spot exactly. And I think it was the same day actually too. But in this case, and you know, you can even take the painting you do here and just modify it. So that's not the final result. You know, you can decide, okay, I want to light this area. I want this area dark. I want to light this area. I want this area dark. And that's what you can get, you know, just by gradually, you know, with a paintbrush, you know, you can use like a 10% or 20%, whatever you think's good, and darken these areas here and just keep so that you get a real feel for depth. So I think that was a more successful shot. And then this was in one of the larger lava tubes. Same story though, just multiple exposures. And then here's a close-up. So on this one, and the ceilings, the walls are really interesting. You know, you get little lava stalactites hanging down from the ceiling and stuff. So here I lit it from the left side, just skimming the light across the surface. And I did two. I did one from both sides, but when I put them together, I just found it was too flat, way too flat. So I just used the one from the left side. And then here too, I actually painted in these intermediate areas to darken them, to give it more depth, you know. And, you know, if you just gradually do it, you can take it away. And, you know, what you end up with, like if everybody watching this took that same image and modified it, they'd all look different. And that's pretty cool about painting with light, I think. This was at Fort Hunter Liggett, which is up 101. You go up 101 and you go past the Tascadero, and the exit is Holone Road, takes you to Fort Hunter Liggett. And then once you enter the fort, you can drive through the fort and then you're back into National Forest. So we actually went up there in March to go camping. When everybody was getting scared and shutting everything down, we thought, hey, we'll be perfectly safe. We'll be out there by ourselves. But one day after we got there, Forest Service came in and said, we're shutting down the forest, everybody out. They had flying over with helicopters and stuff. So we left, we had to go home. But at least that first night I got this photo. And so that area is all Valley Oak woodland. So Valley Oaks are these enormous oak trees that are, you know, 300 years old probably. And each one is just a work of art. And even after they die, the skeleton is amazing. And in this case, the dead tree finally collapsed and fell over. And I thought even that looked like a good photograph. So, you know, here too, it's like maybe 2 exposures here and 1 over here, and I don't know, 1 or 2 exposures here, and then a separate one for the sky. And I was actually really happy the clouds showed up. And here too, I don't know the source. It might have been Soledad. I forget. No, not Soledad. There's a town over on 101, and I forget its name, but it might have been the source of the light. But anyway, I thought it made a real interesting photograph. So then going on with trees, another place that we have frequently gone is the Olympic Peninsula. So here's Olympic National Park, and we go up 101 this way on the west side. And it's funny, this is one area where 101 doubles back, so it never really ends. You know, you drive up 101, you end up with a loop at the end. But anyway, we go up on the west side, and this is the whole rainforest here. So from 101, it's like a 23-mile drive back to the campground. That's where we camp. And it's first come, first serve, no reservations. So you know, we're always kind of crossing our fingers and hope we'll find a place. But you know, we try to get in here early enough that we get a spot. So we got in there this time about 11 o'clock, I guess, and got actually our favorite spot right on the creek. So the attraction there is you got two things. You have these enormous um, big leaf maples, and then also the conifers. The Sitka spruce is the main big conifer, and then also there's Douglas fir. And some of them are just giants. That's what I call them. They're just giants. But anyway, so we'd hike the trails in the daytime, and the maples especially are just draped with mosses. The uh, the evergreens, they must shed their bark enough that there's not the same amount on them. So anyway, I was really attracted to the maples. So I took this photo saying, okay, that's a good shot. I'll come back and try to remember where I stood to take this photo later. And so I did. I got back there, and this was maybe, I don't know, half a mile or so into the woods in the dark. Actually, it wasn't quite dark. It was getting dark. I left about 9:30, and um, the sky was still just barely blue, which you can see. And I actually painted out a lot of the blue, but you can still see it here. And so that was one I did last year. And, as soon as I downloaded and started processing my photos, I thought, whoops, it wasn't sharp. I'd focused as near as I thought I could just using my viewfinder, but it wasn't completely sharp. But I went ahead and did put it together anyway, just to see how it would look. So I went back again this year and did it again. So that's the same tree. Like you can see, this root right here is the same as this root here. And, again, see, the lighting is totally different. And, I could go in and darken these areas and stuff, but that's what I ended up with, at least for this time. Um, and so what I try to do now, I've learned my lesson. First of all, I use a level in the camera to make sure I'm perfectly vertical, because it's in the dark. And then for focus, I either shine a bright light in one little spot, and then using my LCD live view, I blow that spot up and make sure it's sharp. Or another trick is to use a laser. So if you shine a laser, you'd have just a little spot of light somewhere, and then you can focus on that. And then this is one I took last year. And actually, in this case, the tree continued up, but I failed to light it at least enough to make it look like it was totally lit. So I just blacked it out, making it look like a stump. And then you may have seen this one. I've entered this one. I call it, "Hey, baby." And actually, what I really liked about this photo was these two trees are growing on top of this fallen mother tree here. And that's the amazing thing about the Olympic forest. They get 12 feet of rain in every year, primarily, of course, in the wintertime. Of course, it's a longer rainy season than we get. And so everything grows like crazy, and it doesn't, wherever the seed drops, that's where it's going to grow. And it seems to persist and be just fine. Here's another example of an old stump, and here are these trees growing on it. And I think that makes for a more interesting picture, actually. And then this was one I just entered a month or two ago. And so this was one of the big trees, and it might have been one of the Sitka spruces that had fallen over, one of the really big trees. And probably the primary source of mortality in these rainforests is wind, because the trees have fairly shallow roots, and they just get so much weight up in the air that eventually you get a heavy wind and they start coming down. And so all over these forests are fallen trees. But anyway, in this case, I just thought it was so amazing that all these seedlings had started just on the edge of the root crown there. And I believe this might be one of the new routes coming down now to, you know, to reach solid ground. And here's another one showing lots of maple. And then this is my last one. So this, I just was intrigued by the single branch, which is from the maple, and then how the branches then sprouted upward. And then you have this wonderful moss hanging down. So what I want to do is just show you a couple of things. First of all, in Photoshop. So not sure why that won't go up any farther. Okay, whatever. So here you see the layers that I've made, and it ended up, a lot of them were underexposed, and so I think I probably, you know, I took a whole bunch of photos and discovered they were underexposed, and so then I went back and did it all over again. And now some of them, like this one here, let's see, does nothing. How about this one? It does nothing either. Okay, over on the far left, right here, there's apparently that's the only thing that showed any signs of, you know, so I didn't need that. That was superfluous. And then
Stuart,
this
I'm not
one,
seeing the layers. Where are the layers?
what's that?
I'm not seeing the layers. Where are the layers?
Oh, you're not seeing the layers.
Now, what are you referring to?
I beg your pardon. Well, let's see. I have to get back to Photoshop, and then let's see. It's
I
off
can
the
see 'em.
screen.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing them okay too.
Okay, so if you're, how does that work? If you're,
Oh, let me go to a different.
yeah,
Oh,
up
now
at
I see them. Okay, it was the way I was using Zoom.
okay, right, okay.
Had some pictures over the layers a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, and then let's see. For instance, this one, you know, you can see where that one, the lighting there, and I just decided, yeah, I probably don't need that, especially because it's not going all the way down. And then on some of the layers, like you can see here. Okay, so that's without. I see. I made a what do you call it? An adjustment layer, and then painted on the layer, and so that's how much I took off. And let's see, this one here. Okay, so I painted over that fern right there because that was something I didn't need. And then let me see over here. All right, and there's another one I didn't use, or maybe that was the one I showed you. Anyway, so that just gives you an idea of what it looks like, your your palette of options you can work on there. So then let me go to Lightroom. So this is basically what you already saw. That was kind of like my finished product, although it could sure be modified still. And oh, and let me go back to it. So one thing that bothered me, this area right here, I had not lit. So it bothers me that it's not there. So I found that I did one that was flat lighting. So one is lit from the right side over here, one is lit from the left side, and then this one is flat lit, which it's a good thing to do just because sometimes you might want to, pick up some detail that doesn't show up elsewhere. And so in this case, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to get that little spot right there. So then in Lightroom, shift click, I select those three, and then I go up here to photo, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So I have to tell you, I have to warn you that I'm a dilettante when it comes to Photoshop. I know how to do certain things, but I'm by no means am I skilled at it. So all I can show you is what I can do myself, the way I've done it. So let's see, there's one layer. Here's the second layer. I'm doing one with just 3 layers, so it won't take forever. Okay, and there's the third layer. Okay, now I think what I'll do is I'll move this guy up to the top. Now let's see, is that right? No. Oh, okay, that's the one I want up at the top. Okay, all right. So, and I only want that area right there. So I'm gonna make a adjustment layer. Let's see if I can do that now. Okay, let me just get rid of, I'm gonna quit that. Sorry, I've got to get this out of the picture here. Okay, now I can raise this up. There we go. All right, so I've got a layer there. And now, so what I'll do is I'll just go over here and pick the paint bucket. And there may be an easier way to do it, but this is how I do it. Select black and paint this black. And I'm painting the layer, not the image. Okay, and so then, let's see. Now I've added the other one, but I'm still on the black layer. So now I'll go over here to the paintbrush. The X key switches from white to black. All right, and so now I'm going to paint in. And what am I at here? I'm at 100%. Let's go to opacity of like 38, 40, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to paint that in right there. Okay, now that may be all I need from that. That's that one image. Now the other, now I'll select the other and I'll select all 3. Click on you, shift click, all 3 are selected. Go up here to blending mode, lighten. And so now you can, once again, you can see what all 3 are contributing, except that the top one is only contributing that one little section of the branch. And so now I can go in and I'll make a layer here real quick of these 2. Okay, so now let's see, that's on the right side. And so once again, I want to use opacity of maybe, okay, 14, a little bigger on the brush here. And it's too bright, the moss here is too bright, so I want to darken that down. Oh, I'm painting white, excuse me. Now I'm doing it, there we go, okay. And I think actually I'll go to 100% and take out that and that. Now it's on both of them, so I'll go up here to this one. Oh, see what I did? I've taken all the black out of the whole picture. So I'm gonna have to make another layer. I'll put another layer down below it that's black. Let's see now if I go back here, let's see what else. Okay, so that leaf there is too bright. So I'll lighten that opacity back down to about 14. You know, so you get the idea of what I'm doing. And then if I go to the other one here, so that's, let me just quickly make another layer here. What is it? New layer. Okay. Now put it at the bottom. I'll paint it black. There. Okay. So that takes care of that problem. So I won't go any further in it, but that shows you the techniques involved. So then, if there's any questions that I could possibly answer, I'd be happy to try.
Well, I wrote several questions down, Stuart. Some of them are, let me just start with way back to showing your Velo remote. I'm curious about it. That's a radio remote. What kind of range do you get with that?
I think it's like 300 feet, which is, it's pretty good.
And my experience in trying to use something like that is the further away you get, the harder it is to know what you're actually taking a picture of from the camera. So are you going back and forth to check on what's happening, or?
You definitely, yeah, you want to do that, especially from the start. But once you get a feel for it, now, see, that's the issue of if you're lighting something that is farther away and you're not moving up toward it, then it takes a lot longer to give it enough light because of the, whatever the inverse square law of lighting is, how the farther away, the more spread out it is. So, so if you can walk into the picture to light certain areas, then, you might try just counting seconds. So preferably on a nearby subject first to get a feel for it.
Well, if nobody else has them, I really want to encourage people to ask questions, but let me run through a couple of other things. I'm thinking back to the one in, what did you call it? Was it Wapaki, where the,
Uh-huh.
what did you use? Did you know ahead of time about where the Milky Way was, or how did you visualize the positioning of that right in the gap?
I wish I could say I was that smart, but no. No, it just happened that it was in the area. So once I saw it, yeah, then I wanted definitely to have it right at that spot, you know. And of course now with what's that wonderful app that's got all the
Photo pills.
photo pills, exactly. With photo pills, it'll tell you exactly where it is. And many photographers, they want the Milky Way to be spread across the whole sky above their subject, But yeah, and so you have to, choose the time of year. That's the only way to do that.
So,
And I should mention that there's a sign as you drive in on this loop road through Wupaki that says park closes at sunset. And that first year I went in there, I said, I think I'd rather ask forgiveness than permission. And so that's what I did. Now, another year, and I think it was last year, I actually, I think I forget if I called or actually went and asked. And I was told, yeah, there's a fee. It'll be like $200. You have to give us like 2 weeks notice. And I assumed they would have somebody accompany me, So, and one other point, on some of the websites that I follow on Painting with Light, what they're saying now is that a lot of subjects in the parks, for instance, the Mormon barns, there are now ordinances where you cannot use painting with light. But there is a way around it. If you have kind of like a flashlight, kind of like a lantern you could carry, and it doesn't have to be bright at all. But if you can put that out there in your scene behind something like, ideally like behind a rise in a little hill or something like that, you can light distant subjects, and get beautiful natural lighting that doesn't break their regulations. So
is that just because they're tired of people shining flashing lights around in the area? Is that
apparently so? Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah, but there too, it's a matter of, do I ask forgiveness or permission?
I like forgiveness.
Yeah.
So this is an amateur kind of nighttime question. You talked about the color cast of the skies, and this has kind of almost a tealish blue in it, and there was one that was that had kind of the brownish orange, and then one that was a more
Oh, my photos are all over the map.
is there some sort of a preference or standard for what that should be? I've done some of this, and I've been able to by messing with color temperature, get all kinds of answers, but I don't know what the right one or what's more accepted would be.
No, I don't either. Actually, there's a website, a blog that I follow. It's something like night photography in the national parks. I think it might be something like that. And they actually have field trips where they, have workshops, and they offer a lot of free material. I'm sure if you Googled night photography in the national parks, you'd find their website. And they actually have a degrees of Kelvin that is their preferred color for photographing the Milky Way. So yeah, it's just a matter of how deep you want to get into it. But for me, it's more of just, does it look good?
Bill, do
And,
you have,
let me add one more quick thing. Every sky is going to be different to start with. And so, you might add just a little bit of some, hue to correct it, but it'll probably be different in every picture. So sorry, Chris, go ahead.
that's okay. I just want to make sure Bill was done asking questions because he's got good ones. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm done.
I was curious about the Trona photos because I've been there several times, and I know that to get the formations, you have to be some ways away from them. And I'm not thinking of this one. I'm thinking of the one where you had the big one that looks this one. So how far away were you? And more is that I need to know. I'm curious about what brightness of a light did you use? Like,
okay, so
because I know you've mentioned several different kinds of flashlights, and I'm oblivious to all of that.
right. And I think the best thing you could do is to find one and stick with it, because I've been switching around. And with LED lights, many of them, they're cheaply made or whatever. So you push the button once and you get high beam. You push it again and you get low beam. You push it again and it flashes. Push again and finally it turns off. Well, that's awful for painting with light. You don't want to go through that. And so, you want to find, and if you use an LED light, then you'll get a feel for how far off it is. And the other thing you should think about doing is bring a gray card and put a gray card in the picture somewhere, In this case, I think I used the eyedropper and I just said, okay, this is gray. It's close enough to gray, I'll call that gray, and then that would take out the color from the flashlight. But then you might think, well, maybe that's a little too gray. Maybe I want just a little warmer, so, it's kind of that kind of a thing.
But how far away were you?
Oh, okay. So this was a 14 millimeter lens. And so actually we were down in a little canyon with kind of the pinnacles all around us. And we kind of chose that spot because there was less wind there. It was freezing cold. And so I was not very far. I mean, that was just like 50 feet or something, maybe, and that's an issue with the wide angle lens. You have to get into the picture before you actually get the structure of it. So, I might have done better using a different lens, even just maybe a 28 millimeter lens. Stay back a little. Anybody else?
Thanks.
Any other questions out there? We've got 27 folks in the audience, and I've been enjoying the heck out of this presentation.
I have a question. Stuart, have you ever tried taking a handful of strobe lights instead of using the flash?
So light everything with strobes?
Yeah, I mean, they're more powerful. They have a broader, or maybe that's a problem. You could use them with a snoot or something like that to try and control the spread.
Yeah, I know. I think that would be difficult there. I mean, you're right. A snoot would help, but it's almost too bright. I think it's better. The painting with light approach is to just selectively light certain areas.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't think I'd want to use the strobe. I
All right.
carried I carried 3 strobes with me this summer, but only used them for close-up stuff, really.
Have you ever tried the bristlecone forest?
At night, no, I haven't.
Um, I was up there several years ago. It did seem like the park closed
No,
before
you're right.
dusk.
No, it stays open. You can be up there. You can camp. You can go out to the end. What's that called? Founder's Grove, or where the paving ends and you continue on the dirt road. You can camp out there.
Oh,
There's just a big parking lot, and really that's what you'd want to do, because otherwise there's nowhere else to camp there. So you'd be like driving up from. Now there is a campground associated with it, and I have stayed there. But even from there, it's about I don't know, 15. It's probably a 40-minute drive at least to get back into where the trees are.
oh, wow.
But it'd be fun to do, yeah.
Long walk.
I think Barbara Hodgson has done a couple of things out there, haven't you, Barb? Are you still there?
I'm here. Yes, I have. In
Okay.
fact, my favorite photograph that I've ever taken came from there.
And were you camping out there? Barb?
Well, we stopped and asked if we could, and the lady on the desk said, you can't camp. She said, however, you can do night photography out there. So we
Okay.
happened to have we had a camper. So we drove out. It was like 5 miles per hour to this desolate, I think it's called the Patriot Grove.
Yeah, right.
And I found a tree and set up, got focus and all that. Well, sort of got focus. And then turned my camera off, which meant I lost focus. And then had dinner and then went back out. But it was quite a story, because actually Dave always helped me. And on that particular photo, he was using an old monopod that we had that was made of aluminum, and it had my light on the end of it. And so he was just holding the light so I could get focus on the tree. That was my way of doing it in those days. And mountaineer that he was, he didn't have his gloves on. And the cold that came into his body through that, he eventually went into hypothermia, scared the dickens out of us, because nobody knew we were out there, no
Yeah.
cell service, probably 100 miles to a hospital at 5 miles per,
Right.
5 miles
Yeah.
maximum on the road. But it all turned out. We spent the night in our camper. We got him warmed up and he was okay. The sad part about that, I was pointed due north. And my intent was that the stars would make a huge circle. But after Dave got the hypothermia, I didn't have the time to stay out there to get the movement of the stars. But it was quite an experience. The next morning we woke up and we were snowed in. You never know, do you, Stuart?
No.
What you're going to face. But by afternoon, there'd been enough sun that it melted the snow and we could make our way out. But it was pretty scary for a while, because absolutely nobody knew we were there.
Sure.
And it could have turned out a different way, but he did recover from the hypothermia, and I was able to finish the picture. So
That's good. That's good. All right. Okay, well, I guess that's it.
In the lava tubes,
Uh-huh.
in the photos there, what? Well, I guess the question was, what time of day would that have been? It wouldn't really matter, but I was curious
No.
about other people being around and how long you'd have to be in there to do that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good point. No, as I said, very few people go there. So, it's just great. I love parks like that. Um, so, there's like, as you drive around the loop, there'd be a little pull off at each entrance. And sometimes there's a trail to get to the entrance. And, you might see one more car there, or you might not see any. That was my experience. And also, if you happen to go there and you don't happen to have a flashlight, you can check one out at the visitor center. They have flashlights for people.
Wow. Huh.
Pretty cool.
Very cool.
And there's even a lava tube that has a permanent layer of ice, the ice like a floor of ice in it, which is pretty amazing.
Is this the park that's right up at the border, Oregon border?
Yes.
Stuart, I have a question. Talk a little bit about your camera settings, could you?
Right. Okay. Let's see. I was just looking at something. What was it? I try, as my cameras have gotten better, I've been able to, use a higher ISO. So most recently I had one. Oh, in fact, it was the one of Crater Lake. I think that was 3200 ISO. But you get more noise the higher you go with that. And my lens, I bought that. It's a Rokinon 14 millimeter lens. It's got manual focus. I think the f-stop is automatic though. And it's pretty sharp, and Lightroom has the correction for it. So, even though there's all kinds of crazy distortion, Lightroom corrects it. So it's 2.8, but so I'll shoot it either 2.8 or maybe, stop down like one stop, something like that, just to get as much light as I can, And then typically, I don't go over 20 seconds on an exposure. And I think that's kind of the rule of thumb. It depends on your focal length, of course.
When you're painting with light, how long are your exposures?
Okay. Well, for quite a while there, I was setting instead of using a bulb setting, I would just set it on 20 seconds. And then I would do my painting with light. But I found that I didn't need 20 seconds. And so then I just went back to bulb. But I think there's probably an advantage to keeping it on some speed, because then you'll get a better feel for whether you're giving it enough light. So typically I would probably, it'd be more like 10 seconds, so then I'd turn my light off and I'd wait 10 seconds and then take my next, area. So, you might consider something like that. Just try, and of course you don't want it to cut you off too soon. So it's something you'd have to play with.
Stuart, this is Mike Rothschild.
Yes.
We've tried shooting Milky Way together one night, and I was unsuccessful. I've tried half a dozen times since then, and I'm just never successful in capturing the Milky Way. Any advice?
Well, I'm not the best person to ask.
But you're here.
I could improve my photographs a lot, I'm sure. So part of it is, you want to get away from ambient light as much as you can. you know, if you Google, you know, do a Google search for photographing the Milky Way, you're going to find some fantastic tutorials, you know, that will really answer that question better than I could.
Yeah, I've read a number of them.
Well, they have
and-
YouTube also.
Yeah, right. And I've been in really good situations, just have never been able to capture it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Uh,
thanks for a great presentation. Your
Oh, you're
work was
most
really
welcome.
nice.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
I'm off.
Okay.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. That was wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank
Stuart.
you. It was really
Excellent.
good.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks a bunch.
Good night.
We'll see everybody else in 2 weeks for the October exhibition.
All right. Good deal.
Be safe.